Alright, what up, everybody? This is the Bizzle. Just got back from Black fucking Panther. I've been waiting for this movie for 3 years. In fact, my podcast is almost exactly 3 years old, and the announcement of the Black Panther movie around that time was part of what got me into nerd podcasting, along with the return of Star Wars. And I won't linger on all the predictions I made about how amazing this movie was going to be, but it even exceeded my expectations. It's hard for me to know how the general audience is going to receive this. At the moment, they're saying it's over $200 million weekend, which puts it in territory with like Star Wars and Avatar and those kind of movies, Jurassic World, and so forth. And my theater was, I think, just stunned by it in a good way. Like, people weren't cheering not because they weren't into it, but just because they were so into it. But because I was familiar with the property from Marvel, because I knew they were making this movie and been following it the whole way, from the Chadwick Boseman casting to what I think really locked it in, which is the Ryan Coogler directing and bringing in Michael B. Jordan as the villain, and then Lupita Nyong'o, Forest Whitaker, Angela Bassett, and a bunch of other really talented actors. Also, I lived in Africa and have had a relationship with Africa and the people of Africa, both personally and professionally, mostly personally, for the last, God, I don't know, almost 15 years since I was a junior in college back in 2003. And so the sort of Afrofuturist vibe of Black Panther and the blend of culture and music and imagery and costumes and dancing from all over the continent was just amazing. And I just hope everyone gets out there and sees this movie. And I'm not going to give away any spoilers whatsoever. All I'm going to say is the plot of the movie is the least important thing. Not because it's not a good plot, but because the characters and the setting and just the message, which is never rubbed in your face, is the most important thing. There was a sense of humor to this movie that they hinted at in the trailers, but was way more present than I was expecting. But if you've seen Creed in particular, also directed by Ryan Coogler, you'll know that he is from the school that I worship in film, which is that the jokes should be made at times in the most tense situations. That's when they're funniest, or to cut the tension, the way Guardians of the Galaxy did so well and Avengers did so well, and not taking itself too seriously. Speaking of Guardians and Avengers, this is my favorite Marvel movie easily since Avengers 2 Age of Ultron in April of that year. And in terms of a movie that universally was liked, I would say Guardians of the Galaxy in summer of 2014. I liked it better than Ant-Man, I liked it better than Doctor Strange. I did like it better than Captain America Civil War, even though that movie and this movie are intricately tied together, just in terms of the setup, if you've seen Captain America Civil War. But in general, Guardians 2, Thor Ragnarok was a little too over the top. Guardians 2 was a little too over the top. This movie took itself seriously in the best ways and knew when not to take itself seriously. The fights were great. There was tons of CGI because you've got, Black Panther fighting in all sorts of crazy situations. There's no way around it. But me, as a fan of the entire Matrix, I really, I always defend the Matrix trilogy. I really like Matrix Reloaded. The third movie I could live without. But I defend the CGI in Matrix Reloaded just the way I defend the CGI in Lord of the Rings at times, which is like, we know it's CGI, just make it look cool and kinetic, and and we'll be into it. And because of all the real costumes and color and weapons and stuff like that, it completely sells the movie. People are asking, what age should I, how young is too young for this movie? There were some kids there. I think people are waiting to see, because it seems like it could have been a violent movie. People die in this movie, but it's more responsible. There's actually less violence in terms of time than most Marvel movies, but people who get hit by guns when it occasionally happens, or get stabbed by a spear when it occasionally happens, they die, which is a much more responsible way of doing violence, and I'm really glad Marvel allowed this. And so I have been not shitting on Marvel, because they've been doing better than DC, but it felt like Marvel had been getting complacent and self-congratulatory over the last couple of years. But seeing this movie, seeing the Infinity War trailers, and seeing this movie is leading directly into the Infinity War in the place of Wakanda and the Black Panther and all these characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward, I am just going to applaud Kevin Feige for giving Ryan Coogler 100% free reign, including starting the movie in fucking Oakland and tying Oakland to Africa. He's from Oakland. Fruitvale Station was in Oakland. People have made comparisons between Oakland and Philadelphia, where Creed was. It was pretty awesome. The whole cast was amazing. You know, if you are a fan of Chadwick Boseman, Lupita Nyong'o, Michael B. Jordan, Angela Bassett, Forrest Whitaker, any or all of those characters, you are going to fall in love with some of the African characters and African American characters playing African characters that you haven't seen before. You are going to immediately fall in love with this. The characters are highly realized in this, and back to my previous point, my boss was asking me whether his 7-year-old should go. You know, people are worried about violence in movies, which, given the situation, I understand. I think 7 or 8 would be the cutoff, so you have to judge your kid's maturity if they're given to aggressive tendencies. But the thing is, there is some gunplay early in the movie, but not very much. Most of it is hand-to-hand combat, either like with spears, but like more like, you know, Rocky, like Coogler, the director and writer, was definitely channeling his experience with Creed. Great long one-shots, the way we saw in Creed, the way we saw in Fruitvale Station. Coogler is a master of the long shot, and he uses all of Marvel's tools to extend those one-shots in the way Children of Men did, so where they're actual one-shots and then there's a transition, but you can't tell because it's so seamless. And it's not just in the fight scenes. The drama scenes are so good. But if you have a 7, 8-year-old and they're fairly mature, they can definitely handle this, because even though the line between good guys and bad guys is not super clear, it has less to do with glorifying the bad guys at all and more to do with the failings of all of humanity. It's an extremely humanistic tale. It's very touching. There's romance, but it's not over the top. There's brother-sister love. There's him and his bodyguards who are like brothers and sisters, and the mom and the dad, and it's a family. It's a family movie in terms of being about families. And, you know, they make Michael B. Jordan look really psychotic in the trailers, and you see some gunplay. But that's honestly, like, those scenes are an exception to the movie, and Michael B.'s character ends up being very subtle. And I'm just going to say, as awesome as Loki is in Tom Hiddleston, Michael B. Jordan's character in this movie is the most compelling Marvel villain, hands down, other than maybe Loki in the first Thor film that we have seen. And he's ultimately, sort of as I expected, but as it turned out to be the case, he is the link, along with Martin Freeman, between the West, between America, you know, and like Anglo-America and Wakanda. And doing it through the villain was brilliant. And, you know, that's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, 7 or 8 years old, I really think there was no moment, there was no Quentin Tarantino moment in this movie where I was like, this is too violent, you know, like even for me, like I don't even like that stuff. Marvel's pretty good about that. There's a lot of destruction in Marvel movies, but in terms of death, you know, people complain, Star Wars fans thought there was a lot of death in Last Jedi, which is funny. People complain it's not realistic. In this, though, it's an epic story because Wakanda's so powerful, and there is some a little bit of globetrotting, but it's mostly in Africa. And I'll leave you with this: the vision of Africa is absolutely so stunning and so on point. As someone who's visited, I think 10, 11 African countries in Southern Africa and West Africa, I'm familiar with East Africa and North Africa. This takes place somewhere in Central Africa. I think it's a made-up country, obviously. It draws from all these traditions. The music is stunning. Ludwig Göransson, who also scored Creed and worked in a lot of hip-hop there, is back working with Kendrick Lamar, who nailed it on the soundtrack. Yeah, just get out there and see this movie and spread the word about it. You know, I think the social lessons in Star Wars are underrated, but they're also very subtle. almost too subtle for a lot of the population. You can ignore them. Here, they're not rubbing any progressive, quote-unquote, messages in your face. It's just telling a story about being a citizen of the world from the perspective of Africans who are empowered, and not because they are colonial subjects, but they are empowered in themselves. Thank you so much. This is a quick reaction video. My computer's in the shop right now. This is on my iPad. I hope this is okay. And have a safe weekend. See Black Panther. Let me know what you think. And if you want to come on for a podcast, you're welcome to. I did like 8 about Star Wars. Might as well do 16 about Black Panther. So proud. I was like,